If you haven't heard of it already, there's a group of software programs called the Adobe Creative Suite. And it's the #1 professional choice of designers worldwide. The Adobe Creative Suite subscription includes access to the following software. The 3 programs we'll be studying in this class will be Adobe Photoshop, Illustrator, and InDesign. You can download and access these programs by signing up for the Adobe Creative Cloud, which gives you access to these programs for a monthly fee. This fee can be heavily discounted if you're a student at a university or a teacher. So make sure to explore your options and see if you qualify for any discounts. Once I have access to these 3 programs, how do I know which one to use? Photoshop is the king of photos, and I use Photoshop whenever I need to do any photo editing, cropping, or retouching work. Photoshop has a wide array of filters for photos and images. I also like to use Photoshop and work with digital images that are sized in pixels, like Facebook ads and social media ads. All 3 Adobe Creative Suite programs use what's called the layering system. You can have hundreds of layers to make up an image. These layers give you minute control over how things are cropped and how images behave. Photoshop is called a raster program. It works with photos by editing them and manipulating the pixels. That means if I open up a small photo in Photoshop and I try to blow up the image to a large size, you tend to see it get blurry. That's because it stretches those little pixels larger, so the resolution deteriorates as it gets bigger. That's why Photoshop is great for working with photos and raster images. But when you're wanting to develop logos or things that need to remain in vector, I like to switch over to Adobe Illustrator. That's because it's a vector program. That program draws lines and circles and shapes using equations. So that means if I make this circle really large for a very large banner or poster size, it doesn't lose any of the quality or its resolution. I love Illustrator. Between the 3 main design programs I use, I spend the majority of my design time using Adobe Illustrator, and that's because of its vector environment. I do all of my logo design work in Illustrator as well. I could take my logo and make it large or small without any resolution issues. Also, the powerful pen tool in Illustrator. I'm able to create custom intricate shapes that are essential for logo design and any other symbol or icon design. I also do a lot of my print pieces in Illustrator as well, as it's easy to export with bleed and all the extra things that printers like to see in large format printing, like banners, flyers, posters, and more. Really, the only limitation of Adobe Illustrator is its lack of photo editing support, but that's why we have our trusty Photoshop, which I can use to edit photos in Photoshop and simply import them to Illustrator when I'm ready to use them. So what about Adobe InDesign? Whenever you have multiple page documents, maybe 4 pages or more, I suggest creating a document in InDesign. InDesign is used mostly to build publications like flipbooks, magazines, digital PDF documents, and more. And it gives you more control over paragraphs and larger blocks of copy. It also has something called master pages, which can help you apply the same basic design to all pages, even hundreds of pages at a time, so it could be a huge time saver for a designer. There are projects where I use all 3 programs. For example, I may need to edit a magazine cover in Photoshop. Then I import that magazine cover into InDesign and build out the layout. I could even bring in a vector illustration I do in Illustrator into InDesign to bring it all together. It takes a little bit of time to master all 3 programs, but once you do, there's not one single graphic design job you cannot get done.